Time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on this Monday, the 9th day of July 2018. Along with Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic. One more week of vacation for Phil Kornbluth, very well deserved and much needed for him. He will be rejoining us next Monday from Atlanta. There's actually a 24-day period in which you and I, Pro, will not physically see Korn physically in the flesh until about Friday of next week. We won't see him until then, but he'll be back on the air with us from Atlanta on Friday, and I'll be next week on Tuesday through Thursday hanging with the Clemson Tigers for their ACC media events, including Dabo Sweeney's golf tournament, which will be partaking in up at the reserve at Lake Kiowee on Tuesday, and then in Charlotte Wednesday and Thursday for ACC Media Days. Korn will spend the week with the SEC Media Days in Atlanta, and it'll be a very fun time for all next week, and we have some real awesome news to talk to you about involving next week, which we will reveal here in the coming moments. But we have some new odds out from the folks at Las Vegas Sportsbook. Today, the Sportsbook revealed its preseason odds. It's conference long odds, if you will, on who will win each conference all across the power conferences and the ancillary ones and the like. No surprise for the favorites in either the SEC or ACC as far as the conference-wide numbers. Clemson a 5-9 favorite, according to Las Vegas Sportsbook, to win the Atlantic Coast Conference, trailed by Miami 5-2, Florida State 9-2, and Virginia Tech 8-1. I find it interesting. You see two teams in the Coastal right there in the top four, and then the conglomerate of BC, Georgia Tech, Louisville, NC State, and Wake, the teams basically that all Clemson will play, coming in at 60-1. The South Carolina odds are interesting, not because of where they are, but because of who is ahead of them. You have Alabama, as I said before, 5-8 to win the SEC. Georgia is at 5-2. Auburn, Mississippi State come behind them. The first SEC East team not named Georgia is Florida at 18-1 to win the Southeastern Conference. I mean, I have my Phil Steele here. I have it here. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the depth chart of Florida. I still see Felipe Franks at quarterback, pro. I still see Jordan Scarlett and Kadarius Toney and Tyree Cleveland and all these guys who got outscored by their opponents by 56 points a year ago, still with the Gators. Is Dan Mullen Trevor Lawrence incarnate? Can he walk on water too? I mean, come on, man.
No, but he just knows where the rocks are. At least he did at Mississippi State. He's known as the quarterback whisperer.
What's he whispering?
And
Sweet.
Hey, just protect the football.
Don't throw a pick on 3rd and 4.
But let's face it, Mullen's stock has gone up since a so-called draft choice out of Mississippi State made it big in Dallas his rookie year.
Yeah,
so,
one guy.
But
one guy.
But that was the guy because he made himself a quarterback because of his personality.
Right.
And leadership skills. It had nothing to do with that.
I don't know how much credit Dan Mullen gets other than finding the guy. I think Dak Prescott's a self-made man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't understand why Dan Mullen is riding Dak's coattails.
You got to throw Fitzgerald in there. Pretty good guy out of Georgia.
He was good.
Let out of the state.
But you could argue he got him as a result of Dak's success. That's kind of a thing.
Yeah. But, you know, we will see. If anything, you know how they cut short some of the games they replay on the SEC network.
Yeah. Well,
they showed a whole lot of positive Felipe Franks plays, which weren't many when they played LSU. And maybe the guy who set the odds was looking at some of those great plays he made, including, what was it? He had something like a 70 or 75-yard touchdown run.
How much of that was running? I mean, let's be real. Come on. I can't stand all this Florida love. And here's another thing, too, by the way. They have my alma mater ahead of South Carolina, which I find equally repugnant and ludicrous. They got Missouri as a 20-1 to win the conference? In what universe? Please. Missouri's going to lose when they come down here.
As I say, when they know people bet, and they know that the casual guy, he looks at Missouri's offensive stats, and he's going to throw money down on Missouri.
I look at Missouri.
Not worried about the defense.
I look at Missouri's offensive line, and I think Moses saw something similar when he tried to part the Red Sea. A lot of open space. I mean, come on. Missouri at 20-1 is a joke. Georgia at 5-2, okay, I get it. Florida at 18-1 is a joke. A&M at 30-1. That's as much love for Jimbo Fisher. By the way, Jimbo Fisher, they realize that what does A&M not do? Pro, what does A&M don't do?
They don't play defense.
They don't play no defense. Exactly.
Except for blitzing the quarterback. And if they miss, that means a big play on the other end.
All they do is run the D ends upfield.
What are those long things that football players wear when it's raining? You call them poncho or something?
Yeah.
And then somebody had to tell the guy, say, Missouri, no, you're mistaken. Those aren't ponchos. Those are matador capes.
Yes.
Those are what they wave when the running back goes by.
It's just so stupid. So, again, the people who are sleeping on South Carolina are not going to be sleeping very long because they're probably going to see a team that could win in week 2 over a Georgia team who's very young.
If I'm Will Muschamp, I'm loving this.
Oh, of course you.
Please do not give me any love. So, and my guys have enough experience that's going to tick them off to prove some people wrong.
Oh, well, here's the other thing, too, that I find interesting. They got South Carolina going last in Atlanta. So you know that Will Muschamp is going to be walking in, and he's going to be on one. He's going to be on one. He's the last team that goes at SEC Media Day. So, I mean, a lot of times when this happens, you could have maybe some stragglers left. You don't have everybody who wants to stay all the way to the end. So he might end up getting lucky and maybe even having just basically the SC press corps guys, Korn and Bob Holt from Arkansas. That's probably all who will stay to talk to Muschamp. Maybe the LSU guys do because of his time there and whatnot. Maybe some of the Auburn guys too. But at the same time, he could be sitting there, and I'm sure he might take a shot or two. He might just say, hey, you know, we're around here. You know, we finished second in this division last year and went to a New Year's Day bowl. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting the way that some people perceive us, but you know what? We'll see what happens on September 8th.
They wanted to do Will Muschamp a favor. They wanted to let the Georgia alumnus spend as much time in Georgia as he possibly can.
Right. So, I mean, in that vein, and again, I mean, I hate to make it sound like equal time, but I mean, in the ACC, folks, is there really anybody who you give a puncher's chance in this conference outside of the South Carolina upstate? I don't. I see no reason why Clemson shouldn't repeat as champions. None.
Yeah.
None reason.
Now, you can there are people who will argue with you that Florida State, when healthy, compares to Clemson as far as athletic ability. But let me tell you this. I don't care if they have super athletes. The first year of a coach is an adjustment period. And Florida State is not ready to challenge anybody, less more Clemson, this year. The only team that could surprise this year because of what they lost on defense last year is to see if North Carolina State has anybody to step up for those 4 defensive linemen that were drafted last year.
It's okay, though, because NC State, the thing about them is while they always have talent, they'll always have one other thing. That's Dave Doran.
I knew that was coming.
You can't pilot a ship with a rudderless or without a captain, right?
Well, he did pretty good.
The Dutchman will always have a captain.
Central Michigan, wasn't he at Central Michigan?
Yeah,
did pretty good there.
They don't play Clemson when they're it's Central
But,
Michigan.
you know, no matter who the coach is at NC State, this has been the problem with NC State.
Oh,
Should I use the term tease? Because, you know, when Chuck the Chess was there, Chuck Amato was there, and the quarterback with San Diego now had them rolling, and then it looked like Chuck the Chess had it rolling, and then suddenly they became the most penalized team in the ACC and haven't been heard from since as far as championship caliber is concerned.
It's crazy. Who knows? We'll see. We'll continue to talk about it. Your phone calls, 800-956-7266. We'll get into that. We'll get into some other things, news and notes from across the state, and other things involving the great Palmetto State as we continue here on Sports Talk.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
I hate to be so on one when it comes to Florida, but I mean, that just seems to be the one thing where it's like if you took off their uniform and replaced them with anybody else inside the conference, you would look at what they have coming back and their output from a year ago, and you would say rebuild. You would say rebuild, and you would just say, you know what, they're maybe a year away. But no, they're 20-1, 18-1 to win the conference.
And it's incredible. And we mentioned it just in passing, how much they were blessed to have a power running back,
right,
and a guy decent enough to throw enough in Tim Tebow to win a bunch of ball games.
Well, he was the same person.
and then they have not had a quarterback since.
Well, and I'll say this, and I will get off of Florida for a second, but I will kind of stay with the same premise. And I think when people talk about, you know, what's wrong with the college football model, and you can give us a ring on this, because this will probably stir up the pot a little bit. 800-956-7266. Email talkback at SportsTalkSC on the email, and also on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. It is so incredibly hard to crack the little ceiling that is developed here from the top, I would say, 10 to 20 programs in America. And even out of those 10 to 20, the top 5 or 6. I mean, there are some that are now there every year. Your Alabamas, your Clemsons, your Georgias, and the latter two, by the way, took them a while to get to that point. And you can even say that Georgia is a newcomer on the scene as a result of that, and as a result of the hiring of Kirby Smart, because there are a lot of people who are still salty about the fact that they held on to Mark Richt for as long as they did. And now that Mark Richt is down at Miami and Kirby Smart is in Georgia, that people are going out and trying to make things happen from that perspective. So in that vein, you're seeing a lot more of these. You're seeing a lot more of these people who are now jumping on the Georgia bandwagon. But it is very hard for even a school like South Carolina, who sits in a very, very good conference and what I would consider a very tenable schedule, tenable to possibly win its division, get to Atlanta type schedule. It's very, very hard for them to get any kind of love because of the preconceived notions that exist about a particular program based on things that are maybe 20 to 30 years old, coaches removed, things of that nature. They are holding South Carolina hostage for problems that were done by, you know, for Scott and Holtz, those people. I mean, come on. This is not even the sins of Spurrier. This is what happens in this sport, and that's the one thing that just grinds me.
Well, one of the key things you got to remember is that some of these so-called experts try to get in the head, especially if people, if they're setting odds, saying to people who gamble, and they tend to gravitate towards something they don't believe in, and that is that certain programs are ordained to be good.
Right. And
that's not the case. I remember those years when Alabama was mediocre at best.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember calling a friend in Birmingham, and they're saying, I said, what do you think about Bama? He said, I love it. I said, why do you love it? He said, now I can get a ticket. Before I couldn't get a ticket to the game. Now I can at least get a ticket to the game because some of these people don't want to even go to the games. And of course, they took the young married couple and thought they looked good. The coach had a little bit of talent in Mike Shula.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's gone as offensive coordinator with the Panthers. For what that's worth, that didn't work out. And then they went to an alumnus. That didn't work out. And then that's when they had to throw all the eggs in one basket. Please, Nick Tater, come rescue our program.
I like the Nick Tater. I like that. I like that. No, and here's the other part of it. Like it hurts. Mm-hmm. It even hurts those who are inside the room. I mean, think about this and cover your ears, Clemson fans, because I'm going to say a word that probably is blasphemous. But it took Clemson winning the national championship for them to rid the scourge of that verb, Clemsoning. It took them winning the national championship in 2016 because even during that year, people were like, "Oh, there's the Pittsburgh game. Well, they just Clemsoned it away. It's over. It's over." And of course, Dabo is, obviously said the contrary to that effect. But I'm just saying, like that's what it can even hurt you if you've earned your way into that room. And there are people who will still say that stuff about Clemson, and so it doesn't even it never leaves you. Like, I don't know what is it about this sport that causes you to carry the sins of your past, but the fact remains you turn your team over every 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. It's not like this is professional sports where you hold on to a bad contract for years and you have to sit with Jason Bay playing in left field at $40 million a pop and hitting 220. That's not what college football is. College football recycles. We shouldn't have these programs that are ordained to finish in the top 5 just because of their name recognition, or be 18-1 to win the conference just because their name says Gators.
Well, when you look at it, the key point that we always talk about is the fact that there's a mindset that you have to have to winning football games. And that's why I said that everybody says, well, Alabama's a good football team. They got a lot of talent. Yes and no, because the team they had last year is no way near as talented as some other Alabama teams I've seen. But because they've got into the habit of winning, these guys don't know how to lose. Mm-hmm. The key point is, and of course, as I said, Nick Saban knows when to gamble.
Right.
Who in their right mind would pick the spot when he thought that, you know what, I'm going to sit here at the poker table, and I think Georgia, because they threw us for about a 20-yard loss, they're exhaling right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just go over the top and try to win this thing. Mm-hmm. And the gamble worked because the guys somehow know how to win. And it's incredible. And of course, he knows Kirby Smart because Kirby Smart was an assistant under him. So, and let's face it, look at Nick Saban's record against former assistants. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost pristine. Isn't it almost like you see a 0 on the right side of the column.
Right.
So some of these coaches just know how to win. And see, the key point is, Clemson is getting to that point until they had that little hiccup up in upstate New York. And let's face it, mm-hmm. the national championship year, they caught a break
because everybody else lost that same week.
Because NC State's kicker didn't know, how to kick a winning field goal because guess what? NC State has not learned how to win yet. That's why an NC State can go up and down the field, nickel and dime in South Carolina, and they look at the scoreboard at the end of the game, and there's another loss.
About to say, that game, it's funny how you mentioned that game, because I think that was one of the most surprising results of the 2017 season in my eyes, because while NC State completely dominated in that game up and down the field when it comes to gaining yards on South Carolina's defense, I don't know from watching that game that you ever thought the Wolfpack had a chance of winning. Other than like right at the end there when they were driving in that final drive. Mm-hmm. That was the only time where you actually thought in your mind, hey, maybe the Wolfpack can actually pull this thing out, because so much of what South Carolina had done their work early. They'd done their work on special teams, obviously with Deebo Samuel, and you could even say the team. And you always love to drive home the point. NC State has probably played Clemson better than any team inside the ACC regular season.
Yeah, offensively.
And what do they have to show for it?
0.
Exactly. We'll come back. We'll talk some more. 800-956-7266, the phone number. That rough weekend for the Bravos. We'll get into some of that and also some of the news and notes from around the state here as we continue on a Monday edition of Sports Talk. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Hope you're enjoying yourself on this Monday afternoon. Again, a week from today, we'll be at the SEC Media Days in Atlanta. Corn will be in there for that. A little bit of a change from the last couple of years when they, of course, used to hold it in Hoover, Alabama, and now they've moved it to Atlanta. They're going to make it more of a fan-inclusive event, and Corn is just, very, very happy about that because you know how much he loves people.
Yeah. and the College Football Hall of Fame is there.
Yeah, they got the new convention stuff around there with the new stadium as well.
And then obviously it'll be. You would think probably it won't be this way, but you never know. But when you had it in Hoover every year, the hotel they'd have it in turned into the Temple of Worship for Nick Saban. So they want to kind of change that this year by having it in Atlanta, where you have fans from just about every SEC school and ACC school, for that matter.
Say it's driving distance.
Atlanta.
Driving distance from Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Help me. Well, not Missouri. Well, I've done that drive. Don't do that drive. Florida, not so much.
We've seen some fans show up, though, for the championship games.
They have.
Mizzou.
They have. Not quite as much as I'm sure they would have liked. Brought to you by here on Sports Talk by Founders Federal Credit Union. Receive double CU rewards points on lodging, travel, and dining from May 15th through July 31st when you use your Founders Visa Signature Platinum Visa credit card. Visit foundersfcu.com/Visa for full details. Couple of notes here I wanted to pass along on this relatively slow news day. Chad Holbrook has promoted a pair of his coaches to spots that are more paid positions. Couple of raises for Kevin Nichols. He now becomes the associate head coach in charge of recruiting. That was a position that was formerly held by Jim Toman, who, of course, departed for Middle Tennessee State. Again, he was already on staff as a hitting coach. And Will Dorton, who was helping out with the pitchers, will get more prominent role as well as an assistant coach. And so Chad Holbrook at least has been able to keep those guys on staff, which we were wondering whether or not he'd be able to do after Toman's departure. Still some obvious wondering about whether or not Toman might fill some of his staff from people who are currently on staff at either South Carolina or Clemson who have ties inside the state to Toman. But we will certainly keep yourselves posted on that. As far as we know right now, he has not made any hires in state. He's currently basically worried about his current recruiting class and what he'll be able to bring in the rest of the 2018 and 19 class for what he will have in Murfreesboro. Former USC Upstate player has signed a new 2-year deal with the Denver Nuggets. Torrey Craig, who played from 2010 to 2014, spent time both with the Nuggets and the Skyforce in the G League as a two-way player. So it should be interesting to see whether or not he will have a larger role with Denver. And a major league debut last night for a very prominent Clemson center fielder, Steven Duggar, a leadoff hitter / center fielder for the Giants in their victory over the Cardinals yesterday. He had 2 hits, including a hustle double. 59th former Tiger to play in the big leagues, and 7th this year to play. Joins Daniel Gossett and a bunch of others. Tony Sipp, of course, with the Astros, and a couple of others for Clemson. So he's a guy who, according to Bruce Bochy, we played some of this on our sportscasts earlier today. They see a big role for him as part of their offense.
Yeah, the Giants are an interesting team because it's almost like every other year is their click year. If you notice, when they were winning their championships, they win a championship, then they fall back.
Yeah, the even year mojo going.
Next even year, they're back again. But they've got to get their pitching shored up. But they're still within striking distance, in my opinion, to the Diamondbacks, who've dropped back to the pack, and the Dodgers, who seem to be recovering. Who's sitting right there.
The thing that's in their favor is that division sucks. So they have an opportunity to possibly take advantage. Right now, though, the Atlanta Braves have kind of fallen back a bit. They started out very good on that 10-game road trip, but then have lost 4 of their last 5, including 3 of 4 in Milwaukee, to at least finish out 5-5. If I think anybody would have asked, you would have taken 5-5 on that road trip at the outset, but not after you start 5-1 or 4-1.
Yeah, but you know they had to get healthy on a Cardinals team that's struggling, and they won those first 3. And to steal that extra inning game in Yankee Stadium was huge. But the young pitchers are hitting a little bit of a lull. I think they're getting too much to plate, especially early, because we saw early leads come up 6-0 against the Yankees. They closed that to 6-5, and then the same thing in Milwaukee. Except for I think who was that pitched? Anibal Sanchez pitched a solid game, in the Braves only win in Milwaukee. But you're right. If you say 10 rate, what did they say? The formula is win 65 to 70% of your games at home, 500 on the road. But if anybody thought the Atlanta Braves beginning of this year would have 50 wins out of 89 games, you'd have been, locked up in a straitjacket would have been applied to you. So the two surprising teams in the National League have to be the Braves and the Phillies right now.
Surprising for the positive, I would say.
Yeah, yes,
and even Milwaukee too, from that perspective, because of how they again, Braves fans got to see that up close and personal this weekend. But again, as we get to the end of the month of July, and the Braves had 4 All-Stars, so they're obviously anchored by those 4. Fulton Nevich for the pitching side, Ozzie Albies, who is an All-Star reserve, and Freddie Freeman and Nick Markakis, of course, are veteran stalwarts. Do they go out and make a bid for something at the deadline? Because I look at a team like the Baltimore Orioles, who had their window kind of peer open for a couple of years, and then over the last couple, it's been slammed shut. And they are not even trying now to win.
Yeah, because there's a couple of big spenders called the Yankees and Red Sox.
There's nothing but deep pockets in the National League East. You're dealing with Washington, who has said that they're inclined to spend money and might be more inclined to spend money during this trade deadline because of their window possibly closing with a possible departure of Bryce Harper. Philadelphia, who is a similar vein to the Braves, they've been waiting a long time for even an opening for their window to possibly be open. They've probably been waiting a little bit longer than Atlanta has. And right now, they're going to make a bid. So whether it's this game of chicken you want to play or then who makes a move first, I don't think you want to be caught in the sidelines if you're Atlanta, because you don't get a window very often. You must make it happen, because here's the thing. You could come out next year and limp out of the start and not know where you're going.
Well, here's the key. Obviously, Vizcaíno is hurt. That's their closer.
Yes.
And I think he saved something like 8 to 10 straight at one point before he got injured. Soroka, their Canadian phenom, has been injured. So you got one of your top young starters, and your closer is out. So the key point to Atlanta is, they have to find a starter from somewhere as a key. But here's the deal. The caveat is they have to be able to bite their tongue if they see a deal that looks good, but I'm not giving away one of my young players that people are starting to ask for. We're just not going to do that. We may give you a draft pick here and there, or somebody that's in maybe looks promising in the lower minors. But if you ask for some of the gems we have coming up or already up, no, there's no, you can't pull the trigger.
Well, that's the hardest thing too about where the new wild card is, because you have so many teams who feel that they are in the race and in the hunt. I mean, there are probably, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 7 teams in both leagues that know, you know what, we're playing for 2019 and we're going to sell off whatever we have. But at the same time, you do not want to put yourself in a position where, like I said, the Braves make a move, or the Phillies make a move, the Nationals make a move, and now you're in Atlanta. You have to make a move out of necessity. And it's funny. So many people think that staying back, but in my mind, you have to go out and make a move in my mind.
Well, here's the deal. We already thought that Washington made a move when they went for the closer, and still they're struggling.
Yes,
so it's a thing where the neck up is the problem in Washington, not the neck down.
We could have some big recruiting happening over the course of this week, including one big basketball target for both of the in-state schools who's making an announcement this week. We'll continue with that next on Sports Talk.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Welcome back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. It's just because we've been watching this here on SportsCenter. They were showing Wimbledon highlights. You had a very awesome callback from Frank Martin when he was at Wimbledon in 2015.
I was sitting there watching Wimbledon, on a weekend, and they were getting down to, I think, the semifinals or whatever. And then they panned the crowd quickly. I said, wait a minute. I know I didn't see who I thought I saw. And then they went back in the crowd, same shot. I said, that's Frank Martin at Wimbledon. What is this?
Pretty good. Pretty good stuff. We will give you some recruiting here, and we'll start with a pretty big announcement that came this weekend. The contest for Gray Collegiates, Juwan Gary of Gray Collegiate, will end in the coming days. He said on his Instagram story over the weekend that he'll make his commitment announcement this week. The 2019 6'6" player choosing between USC, Clemson, Bama, Virginia Tech, and NC State. 21 points, 9 rebounds per game. He's visited all 5. That is one that and you and I have talked about this, and we can talk about it more, but this is, again, the first real obviously Trey Hannibal, committing to South Carolina earlier in this recruiting stage here from 2019, but this is, again, some of these 2019 kids are starting to fall by the wayside, and it's very interesting to see if they make the choice to stay in state or if they go elsewhere.
Well, the key point here is who wants to wait.
Right.
Because for some of those players, some know that the coaches will wait for them, but depending on how this recruiting goes, and you never know when some kid is going to say, I'm going to reclassify. I'm no longer a junior, I'm a senior. And then suddenly you look up and you say, wait a minute, there's no room at the end of some of the teams I want to go to. They're filling up. And so some want to just, get it out the way before their senior season and apply themselves to not only playing for maybe a championship in high school their senior year, but getting their talents ready for the next level. And then they know who they'll be playing for. So, hats off to Juwan Gary for thinking ahead and making a decision early.
And we'll see how that works as well. Josiah James of Porter Gout Saturday night released the final 9 of USC, Clemson, among others. I'm not going to read all 9 because reading a list of more than 5 is bad radio. But I can just tell you that Kansas is on there, as is Duke, among some of the other usual regional suspects. But
all
USC,
9. This is not a commercial from one of those lawyers.
Yeah, I'm going to say. No, it's not all 9. He says he will start taking officials in August. Warren McClendon of Brunswick, Georgia, going back to football, he told Kip Adams of 24/7 Sports he knows which school he'll commit to and has informed that school. He's taken recent visits to USC, Georgia, Florida, and Auburn. He, of course, is related to South Carolina offensive coordinator Brian McClendon, has family ties not only at USC, but also at Georgia, where McClendon, of course, played his undergrad. Enoch Jackson of Mansfield, Texas. This is a big one for Clemson. He is down to Clemson, Texas Tech, and Arkansas. So Clemson is in with a big defensive lineman out of the Lone Star State, which is something that, you don't usually see Clemson go out that way. And that could be a big inroad for them. Mansfield is a very, that's south of Houston's metro area. That's a big pickup if they can get that in there.
Yeah, they have gone out to Texas before and grabbed a recruit or two, but some of them have, as the year went along, they think about the distance and they pull back. I remember a kid from Texas A&M that happened to, I think.
One other note on McClendon, he said that he's going to make an announcement with possibly a full ceremony, hats on the table. That's being considered. Obviously, he gets something done by the end of August or the first 2 weeks of the regular season. He also said he wants to visit all 4 schools he's thinking of again, but he says he's about 90% sure about where he wants to be. USC commit defensive lineman Jakeem Green picks up an offer from Tennessee. Once USC is in on a guy, they have to have the obvious, go back and, you guys end up, maybe he actually is something. Maybe he is somebody who we actually might consider, because that's just the way things work in recruiting. Once somebody picks up a commitment, now all of a sudden it gives you a full board to actually go out and see somebody. USC defensive line target Jaquez Sorrells has set August the 27th for his commitment. He, of course, camped at USC in June and called USC a top school of his after that visit. Alabama, A&M, Florida State have also been recruiting him. He used to be committed to Florida. Remember this? Chris Steele of Bellflower, California. We were following his possible commitment. Actually came late Friday night. Looked like it was going to come Saturday, but instead he let the cat out of the bag late Friday, and he is going to Southern Cal, as was previously reported by Rivals.com, and then shut down by him because it was premature. He announced officially that he is going to Southern Cal. He made an unofficial visit to USC during his recruiting. Ryan Helinski, 2019 commit, was big on that recruiting, but could not get him done and could not get him to South Carolina. So he instead will go to the fake USC. The people who claim they're USC.
The left coast USC.
The left coast USC.
Or as they call it in California, just simply SC.
Clemson is very, very big on cornerback Jaden Davis of Fort Lauderdale. He's set a week from Wednesday, July 18th, for his commitment announcement. He will choose between Clemson, Kentucky, Penn State, Miami, and Oklahoma. He was last at Clemson for Junior Day in January and, of course, has been in constant contact with recruiters Brent Venables and Mike Reed. They basically keep telling him that his offer is committed, or his offer is firm, and they want him to come. He says he believes he might take 2 to 3 corners and defensive backs. They were just saying by the time July 18th comes, I will have a spot and everything like that. So he says that he will notify the winning school soon, but will not announce publicly until the 18th, and he will do so via video on Twitter. He said last year he allowed only 3 catches by targeted receivers he was assigned to cover during the 2017 football season. Offensive lineman J.D. Duplain of Strongsville, Ohio, said Clemson offensive line coach Robbie Caldwell plans to get back with him in word about an offer between the 15th and the 21st. He said the two talk a lot, and he's been told it looks very good to get an offer. He'll wait on Clemson before making a decision. He also has Michigan State, Boston College, and Indiana considering him. Defensive back Johnny Dixon of Tampa took an official to USC and is scheduled to visit Penn State officially on September the 28th. He will also visit Florida unofficially July 27th and Miami the following day, and also set some officials with both. He last was in contact with his recruiter Travaris Robinson on Friday. He still has a top 5 of USC, Bama, Miami, Penn State, and Ohio State. And Southside Christian tight end Lucas Raber was offered by Cornell. That is a hefty recruiting report, even for when Corn is on vacation. That's a lot. But if you want your recruiting, as much or as little as we can provide to you, you can find that on our website anytime, SportsTalkSC.com. Lists longer than 5 that I won't read will be in full form over there when you see it on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. And it's also on our Twitter, which is at SportsTalkSC. And when you're looking for recruiting news, just use the hashtag STRecruiting. We'll come back here after the top of the hour. We're going to do some more football talk. I'm going to ask you trouble spots, Pro, for each Clemson and South Carolina coming up in the second hour. Just trouble spots on the two teams as we get ready for the 2018 football season. Just trouble positions that you want to look out for, things that you might be looking at that could be possible Achilles heels for them. We'll continue with some more news about the football team in the Carolinas. They've obviously completed the transfer of power with their ownership, so we'll see whether or not we see any changes in that. And something that made me feel very uneasy, and I think Sparks is one of the biggest problems when it comes to or at least pre-collegiate basketball, I will call it pre-collegiate basketball. One of the biggest problems that exists in the sport came to an ugly, ugly head over the weekend. We'll continue the chatter, and we'll also talk a little bit more about what's going on with the NBA offseason as well. Sports Talk continues with Hour 2, and coming up next, we have a very big, awesome announcement about something brand new coming to the Sports Talk family, a brand new addition of the Sports Talk family, and that comes your way next here on South Carolina Radio Network.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, as we are Team Selena over here in the Justin Bieber-Selena Gomez feud, because, you know, Bieber got engaged over the weekend to Haley Baldwin, and yet Selena Gomez posted on Twitter that she is unfazed by by the engagement news of her former ex-beau. She said she does not care. She's over Justin. And the last time they broke up, allowed her to get over him fully. That should tell you one thing about that.
Here's the question: if you're unfazed, why are you on Twitter talking about it?
I had to say, it seems odd. Seems odd. Hey, I'm Team Selena, man. That's if I'm her, I'm feeling a little salty after the fact that he gets engaged to somebody 6 months after he's involved with her.
Well, you know, she had a flirtation with the Canadian. Now she'll go back home to Texas and find a good Texas guy.
Speaking of suitable suitors, we have a fun announcement to make here on Sports Talk. It is no secret that when you are in the business that we are in, you are always trying to expand, grow fonder, grow older, and grow further reaching. And while we love all of our 29 affiliates, 28, 29 affiliates, I think that's what we're up to now here across our Sports Talk, it is never enough to bring everybody we possibly can the best sports talk inside the Palmetto State. So we're making a fantastic new addition to our Sports Talk and South Carolina Radio Network family. We welcome in, for the first time on our network, beginning a week from today, WCCP 105.5 The Roar, which, of course, you can hear Clemson flagship affiliate there for Clemson Tiger Sports in the upstate. Fantastic work done by the folks, Ben Milstead, and everybody who is involved with running that station up there. They have one of the strongest local lineups in the state when it comes to having local programming all the way throughout the day. With our edition up there, they will have 15 hours of the 24 inside the day dedicated to local sports in the state of South Carolina and local programming and original programming. The thing about the WCCP agreement that will be a little bit different if you are riding in the upstate and want to catch us on the air there is that we will be actually tape delayed by an hour. They have a local program that runs until 7 on that station, and they will tape delay our first hour of the program and run it from 7 until 8, and then have our second hour run from 8 until 9. Our stations across the network here will not change. Our distribution will not change. We're still going to stay live from 6 to 8 across the majority and most of the rest of our network. But if you're listening to us on WCCP, you will hear us from 7 until 9 in sequential order. We had talked about possibly putting the second hour, keeping it live, and then running the first hour back, but we wanted to at least maintain the integrity of the show as much as possible and make sure that there is a little bit of order. Now, people are wondering, will you still be able to call in if you listen to us at 7 o'clock in Clemson and want to talk about something that we talked about in the opening hour? Absolutely. The phone lines will stay open for you, 800-956-7266. In fact, we will encourage it because if we're talking about something that's relevant in the opening hour, more than likely it's still relevant by the second hour of the program. And if you let our call screener, Brian Leonard, and our producer, Brian Leonard, know what you want to talk about on the air, we will certainly bring back that topic and reset it for you. But we are very, very excited. I'm so tickled and thrilled to death that we are on this station in the upstate. I'm tickled to death about all the stations we're on here in the upstate and also in the low country and also out by Myrtle Beach. I mean, we will continue the same coverage that we have here across our network. Still the same Gamecock coverage, still the same Clemson coverage, still the same coverage of Coastal Carolina, College Charleston, Furman, Wofford, and everything in between. So nothing will change from a programming standpoint. We are just growing our family by one. And Pro, I should say, I hate to speak for all of us, but you can speak as well. We are more than excited for this brand new edition, which comes your way a week from now.
I mean, a vital area is the upstate, and we're glad to have a footprint back in the upstate. And for you people that really are glutton for punishment, or you think our first hour was so award-winning and you happen to be on the road, just drive toward WCCP and listen to this first hour again. and they'll have the second hour tucked away at from Was it 7 to 8?
7 to 8, 7 to 9. It'll be fun, and you know, it's really, really cool. And you know, I've gotten to know a lot of the guys up there. You know, Brad Sinku, who does the morning show there, and Qualk and Kelly, who are on in the afternoon. And I'm really looking forward to going up to Clemson to meet the whole gang up there. We're gonna try and plan a day where Corn and I go up together and kind of go on some of their local programming again to further promote our getting on the network. But the real cool thing about the fact that we're starting next week is that when we start on WCCP, we'll be starting right away from SEC Media Days, where Corn is, and ACC Media Days, where I will be, and also Dabo Sweeney's golf tournament, which takes place at the Reserve of Lake Kiowee, which includes a chance to speak one-on-one with Dabo, and we're very, very much excited about that, and looking forward to all that comes of that. And also, we're looking about, again, restarting our Pigskin Preview in-season tour and adding Clemson to that mix as well. So we are very much looking forward to all of that with you, and we will continue to give you the best Palmetto State sports talk. Clemson, Carolina, Coastal Carolina, Wofford, Furman, College of Charleston, and yes, also Winthrop, because we love Winthrop just as much as everybody. Though, of course, people will say that they think we love others more than others. Well, guess what? I love all my Palmetto State schools equally, as if they are my own children.
Wow.
And to hell with Georgia and North Carolina. We'll continue here on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. The sale of the Panthers went through today. And this I find a tad interesting from the standpoint the woman who they had basically overseeing things after Jerry Richardson stepped aside, Tina Becker, has resigned. Right as David Tepper takes over, she resigns. Now, she had worked for the Panthers for the last 19 seasons, one of the top-ranked female executives in the National Football League, and we all know about the departure of Jerry Richardson and why he departed the team. I find this rather curious, Pro, because I don't know if this is something that she was asked to resign because David Tepper wants to bring in a new chief operating officer inside that. He had made very, very clear that he wasn't going to try and rock the boat or rock the ship or anything, and that this was mostly something that was done, again, to get rid of the stench of Jerry Richardson. And in fact, the matter is, she took over to try and basically act as the cleaner inside that organization. I find this move a tad curious, although many believe it was as expected.
I think it was as expected. These guys want people that are tremendously loyal to them. And I think
Tepper, that is.
Yes, and I think it was just a matter of time before he moved his guy or gal in, and supposedly they'll know where all the trap doors are together.
Well, the odd thing, and again, I've said this very, very clearly, not to, again, to go back to the hell with North Carolina, but the fact of the matter is, so much of that franchise is run from a charlatan perspective. Charlatan perspective. And I really think they need to go out of their way with this new ownership group, whether it's during training camp, whether it's with a caravan or anything. They need to go out of their way to indoctrinate the state of South Carolina more inside that fan base, because too many people here look at this team as Charlotte's NFL team and North Carolina's NFL team and not South Carolina's.
Well, I think it deals with the age of a person, because let's face it, when the Panthers came into being, there were a lot of fans hoping that the Panthers would be an AFC team. Why? Because a lot of the CBS affiliates over the years, at the time when CBS had the NFC, were Redskins. And that's what they played. The Redskins fans were here, and they didn't want to see their Redskins taken off. And then suddenly, you know, when Fox took over, they carried on the Redskins. But then when the Panthers came in, they said, please don't. And they put them in the NFC, and that meant this territory.
Well, who's had more success over the last over the existence of the Panthers, though? That's
but yeah,
thing.
Yeah,
again,
but
you had that good
loyalty over success when you talk about the Redskins or any other team.
I don't know, man.
Person roots for.
I'll sell my soul to the devil if he won me a championship. I said it.
Well, you're not a fan. You're a bandwagon person.
I'm a masochist. Sports-wise.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, not only on our terrestrial affiliates across the nation on TuneIn Radio. You just look up our affiliate, WQXL in Columbia. That gives us a chance to, you a chance rather to hear us live from 6 until 8, and also anywhere you are in the world. On Periscope as well, on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. You can see us here on our live feed and look at us if you would like to. And, of course, continue to watch us and comment with us at SportsTalkSC on Periscope. All right, back to the football, because I wanted to get into this topic here. Some of the problem issues and problem areas, and I'll start with Clemson. The one thing that gets me is that I look at the offensive line, and I see a group that really wasn't as stout as I think the numbers played itself out to last year. And I even think the numbers really didn't help them at all, because so much of what we were looking at from a run game standpoint, I mean, they didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. Etienne and Feaster combined to go about 1,300, and Kelly Bryant had about 665 yards. Adam Choice also had his moments too. But, you know, it was a time when, you know, when they weren't getting the scramble run from Bryant, they weren't very effective. And I think there were even times against a team like Alabama where you kind of saw the blueprint of how to get to Clemson. And it felt like anytime Kelly had pressure in his face from what was the right side of the offensive line, the part that Pollard and Ankrum was on, that, in my mind, served as a bit of an Achilles heel. And I know that they're going to move Pollard to right guard. They're going to put John Simpson at left guard and keep Ankrum out there on the island there. I don't know if that's the best move for them. And I'm concerned about that Clemson offensive line. And even, you know, to the point where, you know, the quarterback decision kind of has to factor into a lot of that. Because do you really want to put Trevor Lawrence out there with an offensive line? And I think you have to kind of see how they perform over the first few weeks. Not just them, but also Bryant. You have to look at how the offensive line performs if you really want to make that quarterback switch and try to protect your strongest asset, which you might think is your freshman quarterback out of the state of Georgia.
I would think probably one of the things you have to think about is there's a couple of deals here. When you had a Kelly Bryant, because of his escapability,
he covered up a lot of ills.
You don't ask the offensive line to do a lot, because to me, when I think about an offensive line, not only opening holes, but protecting a quarterback who takes the 5 to 7 step drop, which Clemson does not do a lot of anyway.
No.
And so from that standpoint, you don't worry about the offensive line that much. Now, when you worry about the offensive line, and it has nothing to do with the offensive line, quite frankly, is these running backs have to get a little bit more adept at blitz pickup.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if they don't, that can get your quarterback killed as well. Now, I'm thinking, I know that this Lawrence kid has some escapability.
Yes.
But he has the type of arm strength and the accuracy with the deep throw that you're going to ask your offensive line to have protect him with the 5 and 7 step drop. That, to me, is the unanswered question until he gets in a football game, or until, of course, he takes over, as many people believe, the starting position.
Well, the one thing that I found interesting, we thought that Kelly Bryant had trouble throwing the deep ball. Well, one of the first deep balls he threw came against Kent State to Deion Kane. Now, a lot of that could have been dictated on the fact that Kent State does not get the kind of pressure on the quarterback that a representative ACC defensive line, or even something like they will see in a potential playoff game, they don't have that kind of pressure ability to be able to flush Kelly. But I think a lot of the reason why you didn't see Kelly Bryant throw the deep ball is that exact reason. The offensive line couldn't protect long enough, and half the time Tavian Feaster and Travis Etienne were whiffing on blitzers, and he had to flush the pocket and run.
And of course, I think his more accurate throw was the fade, was it not? That
yes.
Just, and I think he liked throwing toward the sidelines because he gave him a line of demarcation in which when he knew that he couldn't kind of drop it in, he could throw it out of bounds
right.
and save himself an interception.
He loved throwing the jump fade. But
the key point to any quarterback that has wheels is you almost have the feeling that a 7 to 8 yard third down is manageable because they can come out of the pocket if nobody's open.
Right.
And that's the key to any quarterback situation. Can you convert on third down? Now, some can do it throwing the football. Others have the wheels that they can do it by running.
And the other part of this, too, is we haven't seen Trevor Lawrence react to pressure yet. We've seen him in a spring game when he knows he's not going to get hit, when he knows he's going to be afforded the amount of time to complete a pass without the pressure of I mean, you make the point all the time. When he played in the spring game, he didn't even wear a flak jacket. He didn't even wear the hip pads. So in my mind,
that hinders my throw. I can't throw.
Well,
the way
you're gonna
have
to throw with it in a game, and you're gonna have to react to blitz pickup in a game. You're gonna have to sit there and wonder, how the heck am I going to react when ETN whiffs off a blitzing linebacker? I hate to keep picking on him, but I mean that's the one thing that was drilled into my mind by coaches. Why is it? Because people were asking, why isn't ETN getting more run? Because ETN would have a 60-yard run in the game, and people were wondering, why aren't we seeing more ETN? Well, he can't pick up the blitz. And guess what happened against Alabama? Ole! Right?
Well, that's why they got all the penetration they had. They were just running people till they found somebody that could break through. I think the key point, though, for Clemson is they got to get whoever quarterbacks on manageable downs. Now, for a young quarterback, I'm not so worried about, say, the initial pressure and how they handle it. It's the pressure of, and we've seen this before, even with veteran quarterbacks at the college level. We saw it with Stidham last year at Clemson. When Clemson's defensive line, and this is how Clemson's defense helps the other parts of their defense, their back seven.
Right.
Suddenly they hit you a few times, and guess what happens?
You get this.
They're not even there, and you see ghosts.
Yes.
And so that's the one thing you want to protect a young quarterback from, is seeing ghosts if he's hit early in a football game.
Well, that's the other thing. And like I said, we were talking about the problem points for Clemson. My answer is offensive line. I don't know what would your answer be of your problem spot? Would you say offensive line as well?
I would not say offensive line. My feeling is, and they'll be protected by a modicum of success because of the defensive pressure up front.
Yes.
But I still worry about the depth in the secondary.
See, that's the thing. That'd be my secondary answer. But like you said, I think having the deep defensive line is going to cover a lot of ills. It didn't in the Syracuse game.
Right.
That Syracuse game, the Clemson back four got completely exposed. And a lot of that had to do with injuries and inexperience involved. And there was the one penalty as well that knocked them out of the game as well. But in my mind, against most teams inside the ACC, you could win with that secondary because of that front four.
Well, the key point is, and let's face it, a lot of times teams see other teams have success and try to copy it. How many people have been looking at NC State's offense and asking themselves, can we do this against Clemson? Because that's the only offense that's sort of run up yardage on Clemson. But Drinkwitz, his offense is run. Now, the other key point to Clemson is this. Obviously, they have a lot of talent, and then we talk about having the experience with it. But while everybody is talking about what do the Gamecocks do without Sky Moore, well, your question to ask on Clemson's side of the defense is, I noticed that a guy named Dorian O'Daniel isn't there at linebacker. And that was a key for them last year. Do they have enough talent and or experience that could take care of a guy that did just about everything from the linebacker?
Well, they're thinking that Isaiah Simmons, they're going to move him down from safety to try and can play that higher that O'Daniel is playing. We'll talk more about that, more about South Carolina's potential trouble spots, and somebody asks us a question about the Aggies, which I'll get to in a moment. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. This is big. For a limited time, Founders Federal Credit Union's 5-year certificate is at its highest rate. Don't miss your chance. Visit foundersfcu.com or your local Founders FCU office to apply. Tomorrow on the program, we'll have our usual Tuesday spot with Kerry Tharp in this space at 7:30. Half past the second hour of the program. We'll talk about the NASCAR from the weekend race at Daytona. And we're also going to talk, continuing our previews and recaps of the spring from across the state. ACC and SEC. We're getting ready for media days coming up next week for both. We're going to talk to voice of the Syracuse Orange. Matt Park will join us, looking to get previews this week from Syracuse, Florida. Also, we're looking at possibly getting one from Boston College, trying to line up John Metter-Perrell, and also Kentucky, long-time recent nemesis of the South Carolina Gamecocks, when we possibly can hook up with somebody from there later on in the week. 800-956-7266. That's how you hook up with us. Someone on Periscope at SportsTalkSC and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC caught with us and asked about the Aggies, and they said, how do you think the Aggies are going to do in the Southeastern Conference this year? Projected by Phil Steele to finish 4th in the opening campaign of former FSU headman Jimbo Fisher. Much to the similar chagrin, I think, of Florida fans, many are expecting an immediate turnaround for the Aggies with Fisher, not only because they spent a boatload of money on him, but number two, they did not feel like they maximized their talent under Kevin Sumlin. One thing, though, I will say still remains in place, Actually, two things remain in place. They don't know who their starting quarterback is, and what did I say before?
Huberdeck, he's not there, and they don't play any defense.
They don't play any defense. Yeah, his eligibility is gone. So basically, they have Nick Starkel, who kind of finished down the stretch last year for them, and Kellen Mond, who proved very largely to be a singular threat, and that threat was not with the arm, it was with the legs. It was only a 51% passer last year, 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Great runner, but not necessarily a good passer. And Nick Starkel, who threw 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions down the stretch last year, 60% of his passes, but as we know, 65 is the new 60 when it comes to pass accuracy in college football. You're not, if you're only throwing, I say only 60, it's funny how much, offenses used to be wanting you to throw 60%. That used to be the old okay. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're looking more for 65, 68% of your passes completed in order to be considered quote unquote solid.
And of course, some of that is because some of your passes now are elongated handoffs. It's a replacement for the running game. Get a quick guy out in space like a feaster and hit him with the ball with a short dump off, and let him run the rest yards after the catch.
That's easy completion now these days. And when you have all these spread offenses, you increase your completion percentage when you have 4 or 5 guys going out in a pattern that gives you a chance for a check down.
And also you get your quarterback killed.
Yes.
Because you don't have any you don't have the mass protection.
You're not wrong.
That you have, yeah.
But they have 8 returning starters on offense, 8 returning starters on defense. One could say that is not good because you return guys who got you to a 7-6 record and a loss in the Belk Bowl to Wake Forest. They lost that Belk Bowl to Wake Forest 55-52.
Yeah, because they had a big lead and they exhaled.
Because they don't play no defense.
Yeah. Well, the key point is ask yourself, when is the last time you've seen a solid Texas A&M defensive lineman that plays the run? Most of them pin their ears back.
Yes.
And they rush the passer.
I mean, Myles Garrett was stout.
Well, he rushed the passer, but he may, disguise his jersey as a Matador cape on some run.
Right.
Especially if they run away from him.
About to say, teams made a living on trying to play, quote unquote, keep away, go opposite of Garrett.
But I was shocked because John Chavis, what a tremendous reputation, a guy out of Dillon, South Carolina, who had some of the best defenses in the Southeastern Conference with his tenure at Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And he's known for putting together good defenses. It's almost like he threw up his hands in the middle of the year and said, look, let's just sick the quarterback, and if we miss, well, we miss. So that was a shock last year with his defense. That's one of the poorest defenses I've ever seen from a John Chavis coach defense.
Well, it's weird because now Chavis ends up going to Arkansas to be the defensive coordinator under Chad Morris, and Jimbo goes and gets Mike Elko from Notre Dame. So in that regard, and again, Notre Dame, better than average defense a year ago. I wouldn't call them world beaters, but again, you wonder what changes are made systemically with the same talent. Like the people who are expecting such a staunch rebuild at A&M are the same people who were picking Florida to go 18-1 to win the conference out of the East. I mean, again, I don't know what kind of miracles, water to wine, you think that Dan Mullen and Jimbo Fisher, and even to a same extent Willie Taggart at Florida State, part of the Florida State issue is the fact that they lost their quarterback in the opening week, although I will add they were more than just bad quarterback play away from turning their season to an actual success. I don't care how close they played Clemson and Death Valley. Point being, you're not gonna completely turn the tide overnight just by switching the coach. It doesn't work that way.
Well, I think Texas A&M is hoping just for a different program because let's face it, the last few years under Kevin Sumlin, tremendous recruiting. But he's blowing his chances with those Arizona quarterbacks he recruited. Right. All of those are gone. And then let's face it, it became, you might as well have taken Bill Murray's movie, what they call it, Groundhog Day, and run it over and over again. What is Texas A&M going to do this year? Oh, they're going to come out like a house of fire. They're going to win the first 3 or 4 games, and they're going to look like they're going to threaten for the West. And then suddenly they're going to hit a brick wall and they're going to lose some games they shouldn't lose. And then they'll be 7-4, 8-3 again. And that's what we've seen.
5-0 start in 2014, including a blowout win at South Carolina in 14. They finish 8-5. They start out 5-0 in 2015, including the big overtime victory against Arkansas in the neutral site contest, beat Arizona State non-conference. Where do they finish? 8-5. Beat UCLA, highly dramatic game in overtime in 2016. Beat South Carolina on the road. Beat Tennessee, who was ranked highly in overtime. They finished 8-5 in 16. Last year, lose that heartbreaker at UCLA. The heartbreaker, where they
gave it away.
Choked it away. Beat South Carolina in a game the Gamecocks should have won. They still start out 4-1. Guess where they finish? 7-6. It's uncanny. That's why he got fired.
The last, I think about the 3rd or 4th year when they were 5-0, I have not seen a stretch of fans, especially at the beginning of the game, just look like they were deer in the headlights because they say we're 5-0 again. But something, the shoe is getting ready to drop. Like they were waiting for something bad to happen and not enjoying the record they have. But that has to do with depth, I think, as well, or lack of same for Texas A&M. But as we said before, they're in a tough division. But they've got to learn how to finish. They've got to learn how to finish. Maybe Jimbo does in the next couple of years have the players in place and the game plan for them to finish.
The one thing they do have is they have what I would consider the world's most overconfident fans, because somebody on the Texas Ags board earlier today said Clemson's in for a rude awakening when we beat them by 24 points in College Station in the second week of the season. And I wanted to know what kind of moonshine they're making in College Station, and if you could ship some here to the Midlands of South Carolina, because that seems bogus, ridiculous.
They already have it here. You don't need to ship any of that here.
About to say,
a bunch of that here.
I need some of that in my life. More Gamecock talk when we come back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. This is a fruitless debate. I'm not even going to get into it. The Asia Wilson, who, again, most decorated athlete in the history of South Carolina, advocating for equal pay or more equal pay for players in the WNBA towards the NBA.
I thought you can get that overseas.
I had to say and the thing about the overseas markets, those are year-long contracts. They pay you throughout the whole year. Those are personal service contracts that they basically, there are some that will even pay you more if you don't play in the WNBA.
Well, you know, also in Europe, correct me if I'm wrong, I know they do this in the men's game, but free housing.
Oh yeah.
Free car services.
Yes.
You know,
It's like living the expat business life. If those of you who've ever experienced that,
and also some have gotten their personalities out there so much. Some American players has played over there. They even get endorsement contracts.
I mean, if you want the reasoning behind why the salaries aren't as equal, the unfortunate thing about it is the fact that the WNBA does not pull in the same type of interest and or revenue that the NBA is. The NBA is a multi-billion-dollar industry and is a worldwide industry. The WNBA largely confined to this country, and the significantly lesser interest and also a lot of that money that is put into the WNBA is done so by the NBA itself from that profit. So that's the hard part.
Thank you, Yao Ming.
And the other part of this too, I mean, there's no greater advocate for women's sports and equality in women's sports than me, as somebody who has broadcasted women's basketball and softball at previous stops, and I want to see opportunities for women in sports as a result of what we have here. I don't know how it changes. I don't know how you get the interest out more than it is already. I think ESPN has been compelled, and rightly so, I think, to give them as large of a platform as they do, especially in the fact that they play most of their games in a time period where mostly nothing else is going on. So they do already have that inherent advantage. I wish I knew the answer as to how that comes in, but as you know, you got to make money before you can obviously invest in your product, which is a hard truth that the women's sports leagues in our country have had to realize. I mean, it led to the folding of the women's soccer league for a while, and they had to come back under a new entity and a new name, and people have wondered why the NBA continues to again pour more of its money into the WNBA. And again, I wish there was a reason and a way to compel people, hey, watch the WNBA. And I've been to WNBA games. They put on a fantastic product. And we could even say it's a more pure brand of basketball than what the NBA puts out at times. And even what's being shown out right now in Las Vegas in the NBA Summer League, I'd much rather watch a WNBA game than Kevin Knox dunking in a gym that's about 1,000 people full right now. Because the Knicks have no hope until next offseason when they're drafting after Kristaps Porzingis has sat out the entire year.
Well, the thing I will say is the one thing about the women's game in the WNBA, because of the number of games, the sense of urgency in each game is greater.
Yeah.
Because you only have, what was it, 30-something games?
Yeah, it's a very condensed season.
Condensed season, because they got to go make the real money when they go to Europe or some other, because the foreign game over there, they pay. Oh yeah, women's basketball.
They pay for basketball. They pay for softball. They have a professional leagues in Japan for that. I mean, it's other countries have it ahead. And if I was the WNBA, I would take whatever pages out of that particular, and maybe it needs to go to a year-round season. Maybe if you made it a year-round season and made it compete more with the NBA, maybe the summer wasteland of sports, if you will, is not the right platform for the WNBA, though. You don't want to necessarily be going up against the NBA. That's the hard part.
Well, the companies won't allow it overseas, but you can see the WNBA having an American season and a European season. Good. But they say, "Oh no, you don't. You're not coming over here barnstorming."
So just in the interest of full disclosure and equal time, we talked about the problem spots for Clemson. I want to at least give some credo to South Carolina, and this is a drum I've been beating since spring football. I really don't know what you're going to do with safety as far as trouble spots. And again, really all my spots are up the middle: center, defensive tackle, middle linebacker, and safety. I have question marks up the middle at all positions, including TJ Brunson, which I don't know how he's going to react to becoming, again, a more vocal leader in the absence of Sky Moore. I don't like losing Dante Stallworth on the defensive tackle, and I personally think while Javon Kinlaw is great, I wonder about Keir Thomas, whether he'll be able to basically go in and play full time at defensive tackle, and I worry about Jamias Williams, Stephen Montack, and again, a thin safety room, and also Donnell Stanley, the Latta King, moving inside to play center. You wonder how he's going to do snapping the football.
Well, yeah. Other than that, I think he's a sound offensive lineman. The shotgun snap is going to be key, but he's shown that he can do the shotgun snap. They wouldn't have him there. The Brunson kid is a natural born leader. I don't see any problems with him. In fact, he was neck and neck with Sky as far as tackles are concerned. Javon Kinlaw gives you the girth inside. In fact, he's one of those guys that, people see and what he did last year as far as getting in shape. This guy has a monster season. He's going in the NFL draft. And nobody would have said that. Somebody coming, after 1 year junior college, having to lose 40 or 50 pounds, and then suddenly just explode.
That's the one guy out of those positions I don't question, by the way. I don't question his commitment. The fact, again, like you said, he's put in the work. I'll give him all the credit in the world. And I still remember watching that play against Florida where he came out of nowhere on the one swing pass and basically decapitated the one guy against Florida. That to me showed that's a guy who I'll go to war with, Javon Kinlaw.
Well, the thing about Kinlaw is he's still trying to find out how good he is, because if I'm not mistaken, if you remember that play, after he made a tackle, he got up and looked at Will Muschamp. Did you see that? It was almost like he didn't believe he did that. So the guy still is trying to find out how good he could be. But yeah, the lack of girth inside at the tackles going to be key, especially against a team that wants to run the football. And they'll get that first test early to see what Georgia's going to do. Well, because Georgia, even with some new running backs and some new faces on the offensive line, they're going to test your manhood early to see what you can do.
And they want Keir to be kind of a not rush tackle, but like somebody who can, create a pile, make some space happen for linebackers, create some space for Brunson and others to possibly make plays from the linebacking spot. And he might be looked at as a bit of a mercenary on rundowns, and maybe somebody who can be an extra special rush tackle. We do a little defensive end / tackle stunts with somebody on the outside there on passing downs.
The key point is I may be in the minority, but because of the talent I see and the potential and the added depth, if you compare it to the first 2 years, I'm not really that worried about the secondary because of not who's basically on the field, but who I know is coaching them. Because Will Muschamp, for whatever reason, even that first year when they were just messing with baling wire, had guys in position to make play. It was just fascinating. I say, how is he doing this? Hayden Hurst at tight end. Surprisingly, in the running game, they're going to have to replace him because you saw some key blocks thrown in the running game by Hayden Hurst.
Hope you enjoyed the program today. We're back tomorrow, same time, 6 to 8, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.